Hello,
How you
Graeme.
doing?
There you are. Hello.
How's things? You all right?
Very good, thank you. Yes.
Can I just say, Graeme, I've got some serious beard envy going on right now. I've a couple of months. I've been trying to grow this in isolation, just to. But
All right.
I'm feeling a bit.
Oh,
like,
I gave mine a trim before the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, don't mind us. We're just having some beard
Before
chat.
I'm trying to get in this action too. I'm just kind of late to the party, I think.
Before lockdown, I would go to the barber every month, but since lockdown, I've been doing it myself, and it's actually got shorter.
Yeah.
So my barber's really pissed off because he's losing out.
He's losing money. Get the hedge trimmers out.
Mm.
How have you been getting on during lockdown, Graeme?
Well, I've been very busy, but of course, there's no income whatsoever because I get paid. I've got limited company, and I pay myself in dividends. So therefore, as far as the government is concerned, that means I don't get any help. I do have a part-time senior lecturer's salary, but that's not very much. But luckily, that pays the mortgage every month. My wife works full-time, so I mean, I've been lucky. The past 5 years, I've been so busy that I've got money put aside, but that's supposed to be for the future, not for now.
Yeah.
But I had 3 gigs at the weekend, and I had 1 gig last weekend.
Oh, superb.
So
Nice.
slowly, I think we'll be back. I do think we'll be back to clubbing a lot sooner than people think.
Okay.
Hopefully.
With social distancing and face masks, I do think that, because I have been talking to various shadow cabinet MPs, and they're giving me little snippets of information. So
Nice. Well, you are the man in the know, Graeme. You are the man in the know.
Well, because for the first 6 weeks of lockdown, I was live streaming at least 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And then I realised that although it's great for your profile, it's absolutely rubbish for your bank balance because you don't get any money out of it.
That's true.
And so I thought, well, I'm going to stop doing it. And the last one I did was my 12-hour stream with United We Stream.
Yeah.
And I thought, how would you top that? So I thought, I'll have a break from it. I mean, I've done a couple since, but I had a break. And then I spent my time campaigning on 2 fronts. One front is with Forgotten Limited and Excluded UK about people like me who aren't getting any help financially.
Yeah.
And also with the Nighttime Industry Association, campaigning about trying to get the nighttime economy back to some kind of normality. It's annoying that you see British Airways and Wetherspoons, for example, getting massive bailouts, then making people redundant. But the nighttime economy is worth over £100 billion to the UK economy.
Yeah.
And I think because generally people who work in the nighttime economy, generally speaking, have never supported the Tory party.
Yep.
Which suggests that might be one of the reasons why they're not really that bothered about helping us. But who knows?
Yeah. Because me and John seen a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel about a month or so ago. We were finally getting some bookings in again, more background music, and then all of a sudden that got taken away from us. We got 1 gig, and now you can't even have the TV on in the pub. Basically.
I know. I've already had two cancelled. They were in the diary, ready to go, and then they got cancelled because the local council decided that they changed their mind. One was a festival,
right,
and one was an outdoor event in Manchester, and then last minute the council changed their mind. And that's no way to kind of prepare and run things. So
kind of hoping for the best, book it and hope for the best. It might actually go ahead, then pull the plug just before
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Where is it you've had your gigs recently? You said you've had 3 gigs recently?
Well, on the 22nd of August, I played at a place called Hardwick Hall in the northeast. That's kind of between Darlington and Durham. It was me, Norman Jay, and Heather Small.
Oh, super.
And there was 800 people who were at 100 tables of 8 people.
Right.
All kind of sectioned off with table service. And if you left your area, you had to put a mask on. Wow. And towards the end, there was a massive 10-meter gap between the tables and the stage. And the last kind of half an hour, people were allowed to go down the front as long as they had masks on and kept their distance. That was really good. And everyone followed the rules as well.
Nice.
Last Saturday, I was in Sheffield at this outdoor event. And people had to book tables. And again, it was table service. and stay at their tables. And that again, everyone followed the rules. That was good. People just stood up and danced at their tables, basically. On Sunday, I did an indoor test event in Carlisle,
all right,
which went really well. People had to stay in at their tables. And then yesterday there was a vintage fair near Preston at this big mansion.
right.
This is historic site with a massive lawn. So there was like stalls, like a vintage market with stalls and food and everything, and loads of deck chairs. And you had to stick to your group of deck chairs. Right. But if you wanted to go and get food or drink or go and buy stuff, you had to put a mask on and socially distance. And they all went really, really well. And it just shows you that if the government would just talk to people who are involved in putting on events, whether they're indoors or outdoors, then solutions can be found, I think.
Definitely. I think it's quite fitting that you're wearing the Save the Sub Club t-shirt as well.
It was a conscious thing. Normally, I wear one of my own t-shirts, but I thought, well, considering that you are in Glasgow, and I thought I'll put this on.
We like that. We like that touch. I think
it's phenomenal how well that campaign went, actually. The amount of money raised in such a short period of time just shows the level of support they've got.
No, absolutely. I think by about 4 hours after they launched, they reached their target, and then 8 hours later, they almost doubled the target. And it just shows you how much love there is for that club, because I think it's a unique club, and the fact it's been around for so many years. It's probably one of the greatest venues in the UK. Absolutely.
Yep. I think it was a big shock when the Archies went under, and a lot of people didn't expect it. So I think people are stepping up, saying this ain't happening again. You aren't taking the subby this time.
Exactly.
Maybe we should go back to happier times then, Graeme. Back to the happier days of the LA rave scene. How did you get into it? What inspired you to get into the DJing, into the rave scene, or at the beginning, basically?
Well, up until 1984, I played in bands, and I had absolutely no desire to be a DJ whatsoever. Right. I never wanted to be a DJ. And some of the bands I was in Nottingham, we were getting a lot of interest from record labels, and we supported some big acts as well. Right. I had a job in a record shop in Nottingham, an independent record shop called Slits Disc, and the owner of the record shop bought a nightclub and decided that, because the owner's office was on the same floor that I worked on, the singles and second-hand floor, and he loved the music I played in the shop, because I would play, all the new singles that came in, but I'd also play a real selection of like classic stuff, because I was in charge of the second-hand department. And he said, look, I bought this club and I want you to DJ. And I said, well, I'm not a DJ. He goes, no, but I like the music you play in the shop.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I'll give it a go. And within a month of doing it, I thought, I love this. This is fantastic. I just basically, what I did then is still what I do now. I basically played music that I liked.
Yep.
And people liked what I played. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, if someone comes up to me and asks for a record, doesn't matter how big that record is, if I don't like it, I just can't play it. And I have to tell them politely, look, I know it's a massive tune, and I know everyone else is playing it, and I know it would go right off if I dropped it, but I can't play it. I don't like it, and I haven't even got it.
Got to stand your ground.
Yeah, that's
you have to stand your ground. Sometimes, though, in the past 10 years, I've started doing a lot of private events. People who've got more money than sense, to be honest, book me for their 40th or their 50th, or even second weddings. Sometimes it can be a bit tricky when the client, who's paying me very well, sends through a list of tunes they want to play, and up will pop certain massive, and I'm like, oh my god, what am I going to do? But I always get away with not playing them, because I make sure that when it's a private booking, I do sometimes play things I wouldn't play in a club.
Yeah.
But I still have to like them. Mm-hmm. So I have played, for example, there are certain pop records that I've played at private parties, but I do still like them. But you wouldn't catch me playing them in a club. So basically, so I ended up giving up playing saxophone and singing in a band to concentrate on DJing. And then I met Mike Pickering at an ID magazine photo shoot in London in 1987. And of course, I was aware of Mike because of his work with Quando Quango and T-Coy. And he was aware of me because I had a record label called Submission. And I knew that he was playing our records at Hacienda. And we hit it off. We kind of exchanged phone numbers because, in those days, you had to physically dial someone's house and hope they were in.
Yep.
And he asked me to cover for him at Hacienda when he went on holiday in 88, and I did, and ended up staying.
Wow.
And, we were both very lucky that we were in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
This amazing music was coming out of North America.
Yep.
Ecstasy had appeared.
Yep.
And the fact that the Hacienda was this huge space that welcomed everyone. It didn't matter if you were, what your ethnicity was, or what your sexual preference was, or what your social background was. It didn't matter. And of course, in those days, a lot of clubs kind of were for specific groups of people, and you didn't have to dress up to get in.
Yeah.
And everything just came together. And the fact that the Hacienda was owned by Factory Records, and it had that New Order connection, and Tony Wilson in the background.
Yep.
And it just exploded from there. It just did. And then one of my earliest memories of that period was there's a club in Aberdeen called Fever.
Right.
And Mike Grieve, who now owns a sub club, sent a fax to the Hacienda from Aberdeen saying he wanted to book me to play at Fever on a Sunday. Now, of course, in those days, I worked Wednesday nights in Sheffield, Thursday nights in Leicester, Friday nights at the Hacienda, Saturday nights in Nottingham.
Right.
And so, and I was always very loyal to those nights. Not like nowadays when you just play all over the place.
Weddings, second weddings and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. These were my weekly residencies. And in the late 80s, if people wanted to book me, they had to do it on a Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, and people did actually do that. Yeah. So I got this fax: "Will you come and play at this sub club? Sorry, at Fever in Aberdeen." I was like, "I'd love to." And so we agreed. I phoned them up. We agreed a price plus a flight plus a hotel. I remember flying up to Aberdeen from Manchester, and Mike met me off the plane. And as we're walking out the terminal to his car, he said, "Can I just say, Graeme, you sound Scottish." I went, "I am." He said, "Well, that's great because everyone's assumed that you're from Manchester." I went, "No, I'm actually from Aberdeen." And he's like, "Oh, you are kidding." People, when they find out that you're one of them, they're freaked out. And I said, "Well, what are they going to do when I take my jacket off?" And I unbuttoned my denim jacket to reveal the red shirt of Aberdeen. And he's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So I got to the club, and they introduced me, and they said, "And you won't believe he's one of us, he's from Aberdeen," and took my jacket off, and the place went mental. And I ended up playing there every month for the next three or 4 years, and which was great because although I was born in Aberdeen, I left when I was very young.
Right.
But moved to Fife, and I did spend every summer as a child. I used to spend every summer in Aberdeen. I used to go and stay with my grandparents, but I never really had any friends. All my friends are from Fife,
Yeah.
But then suddenly, 1988, I started to make friends in Aberdeen, which was great. And even to this day, I still, although not for a while, I still play in Aberdeen once or twice a year and hang out with everyone I used to hang out with in Aberdeen. And when I can, go to Pittodrie, which is very important to me.
Back to the holy place. So was it the music that drew you down to England then, was it, Graeme? Was it the band, being in the band? Or
No, when I was about to do my hires at Kirkcaldy High School.
Right.
Which, by the way, other alumni of Kirkcaldy High School include Gordon Brown,
Right.
and Val McDermott.
Okay.
Right.
So, you know, there's some good former pupils from Kirkcaldy High School. So I was about to do my hires because I wanted to go to Napier College in Edinburgh and study journalism. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And my dad came home one day and said, I've got a job. We're moving to the East Midlands. And I'm like, no, I've got to do my hires. And I was adamant, I really wanted to do my hires. I didn't want to just change education system and start to do A-levels, which were slightly different.
Yeah.
So my whole family moved to the East Midlands, and I stayed in Kirkcaldy and finished 6th year. And then that summer, I went down to stay with my family. And I'd never been to England. I was like, what? 17, 18. I'd never been to England. Well, apart from apparently I went to a wedding in Newcastle when I was 7. But I don't remember that. But and I thought it's actually pretty good down here because my dad, my dad,
clubs down there.
Well, no, my dad worked for Next, and he was the area manager for the whole Midlands.
Right.
So I was like, so Dad, what are you doing tomorrow? He said, well, I'm getting up at 5 and I'm going to Nottingham, Leicester, Birmingham, Wolverhampton and Dudley, and then I'm coming home. And I'm like, well, can I come with you? It's like, if you like, you have to get up at 5 o'clock. So I'd get up and, get up at 5, jump in the car with my dad, and then he'd go to the shop and say, right, I'll be back here in an hour and a half. And I would go and visit record shops in all these cities in the Midlands.
That's clever. That's clever.
But the thing is, when you're like growing up in Kirkcaldy, well, I used to go to Edinburgh a lot, and I did work in a record shop when I was at school, Bruce's Record Shop. Which look up Bruce's Record Shop, and you'll see that they were all over Scotland. And so I'd go to Edinburgh a lot, occasionally Dundee, very occasionally Glasgow, and obviously I knew Aberdeen a lot. But suddenly, when you're in the Midlands of England, all these big cities are very close together, and they've all got their own identities, and they're all very different. And then, of course, I start to go and see bands playing in all these cities. And this was the very early 80s. So you go and see bands like the Specials, or American bands like the Go-Go's, or Madness, or Squeeze, or all that thing. And I thought, this is fantastic down here. So I ended up staying. And then after about a year and a half, my dad came home and said, great news, everyone. I've got a new job. We're moving back to Scotland. And I'm like, no, I'm staying. And so I moved to Nottingham.
All right.
Got a job in a record shop, and played in bands and stuff, and then became a DJ. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Definitely.
It's amazing.
There's a lot of people that are watching on now or view what we do. I'm sure possibly haven't even heard of the Hacienda and how important it was. Maybe is there any way to sum that up? How important that actually was to the British rave culture, Graeme?
Well, it was very important because it started off as a grand idea by Tony Wilson, Rob Gretton, both of whom aren't with us anymore. Rob Gretton was the manager of Joy Division, later New Order. And Factory Records, and it was to create a space for an alternative kind of space for people to come and enjoy great music, because clubs then were just like played chart stuff and you had to dress up to get in. And for bands to come and play at a new venue. So even though I lived in Nottingham, I used to get the train up to Manchester to go and see a lot of Scottish bands at Hacienda, like Orange Juice, Aztec Camera, Joseph K, Hip Sway, that's a really obscure one, and Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, The Associates, and
John, all that. Oh yeah.
And it was a great venue, but club nights never really were a big thing there. And then in I think it was 1986, Mike Pickering started doing Friday Nude Night, and he was playing pretty much what I was playing in Nottingham, which was a real mix of soul, funk, disco, new wave, pop, just a real mishmash. But then, like me, he noticed in 1986, a lot of these obscure 12 inches appeared from Chicago, Detroit, and New York, which ultimately became house music.
Yep.
And then house music started to take over. But then this little magic pill called ecstasy came along.
Yeah.
MDMA, and just the combination of the music, the ecstasy, and the Hacienda itself, because of the kudos it had with the Factory Records connection, and everything just exploded. Now, there is this alternative story that a group of DJs from the southeast of England went to Ibiza and discovered house music. I'm not saying they didn't, but that was well after the house music was massive in the East Midlands, the West Midlands, the Northwest.
Yep.
And, even like today, there are people who were born after the Hacienda closed. I mean, the physical venue closed in 97.
Right.
But the club still exists. We've had a very successful few years doing Hacienda Classical. We still do Hacienda Club Nights. In fact, next April, Easter weekend, we're doing a massive Hacienda night at Tobacco Dock in London, where we're resurrecting the nude night that me and Mike did on a Friday, the hot night that Mike and John De Silva did on a Wednesday, and the flesh night, which was then called the gay night, but of course now it's the LGBTQ night, which was on a Thursday. And we're doing these 3 massive nights together in London next April. And people are going crazy for it, but not just people who are over 45 who used to go to the nights. There's a whole new generation of clubbers who were born this century who get really excited about it. But that makes total sense to me, because when I was younger and you discover new music, you want to know how that exists. So you look back and follow the thread back to find out, because like early house music is just very cheaply made disco music.
Yeah,
so if you want to know how it was made or why it was made, you end up going back and discovering Philadelphia International All-Stars, the Salsoul Orchestra. So it totally makes sense to me that kids who were brought up on EDM, that really bland commercial EDM, are going to think, well, this is really good. Where does it come from? And where does that take you? It takes you right back to like acid house, Detroit techno. And then if you're looking, the internet leads you to then discover that this club called the Hacienda in Manchester was where the kind of the UK rave scene, for want of a better word, one of the birthplaces of it. And the fact that, I suppose, if people then find out that some of the DJs who played there are still working and are still doing it, then obviously you're going to want to go and see them, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because if you'd said to me when I started out DJing in 1984, you'll be doing this next century, and you'll be doing it when you're in your 50s.
Yeah.
My response would have been, "Don't be so stupid." But yet, I am, and sometimes I still can't believe that I am. I mean, at the weekend, the 3 gigs I did weren't massive gigs.
Yep.
But I got so nervous, especially the weekend before doing my first gig in 5 months. I got the train. I was going to drive, but felt so anxious about it.
Right.
I changed my mind to get the train instead.
Yeah.
And I got the train up, and I got there, and the atmosphere of it all, and the anticipation from the crowd, and just walking through the crowd to get to the stage, and everyone's getting excited. Yep. And I thought, I'm so glad I'm still able to do,
still living the dream,
what I love,
Yeah, it might be difficult times, but I think it puts into perspective when you can get that first gig back out again, isn't it? And you realise what it actually means to you to still be doing it this long.
No, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, when the first few weeks of lockdown, doing all the live streaming was great, because you just kept doing what you were doing. But what was missing was the audience and the atmosphere. Yeah. And okay, you'd get instant feedback if you're doing Facebook Live, and you could type an answer, but that was great. Yep. But it's not the same as seeing people with their hands in the air, or just sharing a smile with someone, or seeing someone you recognise.
How did you find it now, Graeme, with the gigs you've been to, with the social distancing in place and stuff? Has it made a big impact on the atmosphere there? Are you still kind of getting a connection with the crowd?
you still connect. I mean, at Hardwick Hall, it was difficult because I was on a stage that was 10 meters back from the audience. But you could still feel the love, and there was a good vibe going. But and although it was quieter than normal, on stage I had my monitors on really loud, so I was quite happy. In Sheffield, the place I did in Sheffield, it's a massive yard that's got lots of steel shipping containers that have been converted into bars, restaurants, independent retailers, and it's on 2 levels. And I was DJing on the upstairs level, where they had a big area with tables and an inside area with tables. And I was DJing where the inside met the outside. So I was surrounded by people, and people were coming up doing fist bumps and elbow touches and kind of have a selfie. And you were really close to them. And the atmosphere there was incredible. In Carlisle, because it was indoors, there was less people than normal, but everyone was kind of dancing around their tables. And then yesterday at the outdoor thing in Preston, when I finished, I to go to the toilet, I had to walk through all the deck chairs. So everyone was just jumping up and doing the old quick selfie and elbow touching and fist bumping. So you still get that atmosphere, you still get that vibe. The only difference is people aren't crammed together down the front going mental. On the plus side, though, it means you haven't got a sea of faces just looking at you as if you're going to expecting you to do something. People are all in their little groups dancing and not really paying attention to the stage, which is how it should be. So in many respects, it's a bit like what it was pre-smartphone days. And the other thing as well, nobody's allowed anywhere near the DJ box. And that's great as far as I'm concerned.
No requests.
It's not just requests. It's just like you don't get people start talking to you when you've clearly you got your headphone on your ear and you're doing stuff. It's pretty obvious to me.
Paul does that all the time.
He must be doing something. Or people coming and talking to you on the ear that you got the headphone over, and you're going like, 1 minute, just a minute. I'm trying to mix. No, all I want to say is, I used to come and see you at the Hacienda. I just think you're great. Thank you. So none of that. Oh, but I mean, it'll return, and that's fine.
That's quite a positive.
I'm not knocking people who do that, because without people showing, coming along to do that and see me, then I wouldn't be able to do what I do. But sometimes you think, oh my God, can you not see that I'm busy? And it's not just me. I see other people doing it to other DJs, Or if I'm at the side of a stage in normal times and someone goes, I just want to have a quick word with Mike. He says, well, he's DJing. No, I just want a quick word. Well, wait until he takes his headphones off. and then they go, oh yeah.
I think me and John started these chats at the start of lockdown. So at the start it was uncertain. Then a few months later, guests hit a point where it was getting quite doom and gloom for a while. But I think this has been the most positive one yet, John. To be fair, I think there's a lot of positivity in this. Really, it's good to hear.
I don't think I'm not negative by nature, because in 2008, when we had the big financial crash, that was completely unexpected and out of the blue. And that was 12 years ago. So I was in my early 40s, and it was around, up until 2008, basically everything I ever earned, I spent. And so when 2008 came, I just was not prepared. Like a lot of people weren't prepared for the fact that clubs closed, promoters went out of business, and venues, some festivals went under, and promoters started saying, I still want to book you, but I can't pay you what I'm usually paying you. And it was really tough. And then the past 5 years have been so amazing. I thought, right, in case 2008 happens again, I'm gonna cut my cloth. I mean, actually, since 2008, moved house from a fucking massive house that was hemorrhaging money every month. My house is still a big house, but it's about half the size of my previous house, and we don't hemorrhage money. I've also got teenage boys; they cost a lot of money. So I've kind of steadied the ship and learned a lot from 2008. Worked harder. Also, given up drinking was a big help as well, because Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays just ceased to exist. But now I can have busy weekends, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm doing other stuff because I'm also like a part-time senior lecturer as well. So when the lockdown came, it was like, Jesus Christ, this is not what anyone was expecting. And it went on longer and longer and longer. But I'm prepared for it. I've got money. Like I say, money is supposed to be for the future, but luckily it's there. But I don't think anyone expected it to go on for so long. From the minute lockdown began, I've always taken a positive view, because I know a lot of DJs similar age to me who are in real trouble because they weren't prepared for it. They've just their whole career has been about money comes in, money goes out, and it's quite tight margins. And also as well, in 2008, I refused to do ridiculous deals with promoters who were trying to get ridiculous deals. I said, no, I can negotiate a new fee, but there's no way I'm doing it for that much. And I think a lot of DJs who did that have never managed to recover and get back up. So I've been positive the whole way through and keep myself busy with my students online, with the live streaming, with the campaigning, and just getting on with life, because I do not believe this is going to be forever. Well, it's not going to be forever, but I do believe by the spring things will be a lot more like they used to be.
It's quite positive. You've got that event coming up in April as well, in London. Did you say that was?
That's right. It's Good Friday. That's April the 24th, I think. It's me, Mike Pickering, and Masters at Work in the Nude Arena. It's John Da Silva, Kevin Saunderson, Juan Atkins, and Derek May, otherwise known as the Belleville Three, in the Hot Room. And in the Flesh Room, DJ Paulette with a special guest to be announced. I can't tell you who it is.
Brilliant. Well, that's promising times. We're all hoping for the best.
But I don't think you can sit around and wait and hope for the best. I think you have to go, right, next April, let's it's fairly likely that we'll be able to do this, so let's go ahead and plan it. We've already had to postpone all 8 of this year's Hacienda Classical shows. And that's and the worst thing about that is there's over 100 people involved in that show. It's not just the 70 people on stage. There's another 30 people who do the sound and the lights and the stage, and they're all out of work basically. I'm lucky that I've got my small part-time lecture salary. I'm lucky that my wife works full-time. But rather than sit around being miserable and moaning about it, I thought, right, it is what it is. I've got to do something and keep busy. And that
use the time productively, to actually.
I have been using the time productively. I mean, there's a new project that I can't tell you about until it's signed off. But there's an exciting new project.
Such a tease, on it.
I know.
The cameras on.
We bring you on here for the program.
I can't. But when it's signed off, I'll be telling everyone about it. But it's a music-based project but this project, when it's announced, people will go, how come he's never done that before? I'll tell you why, because in lockdown, I'm a very keen mountain biker. I have been all my life. But since lockdown, instead of going out 2 or 3 times a week, I'm going out religiously without fail at 5 a.m. every other morning. Religiously, even if it's raining. And so, and I do a minimum of like 50 kilometers, right? And that's about 2.5 hours. Or if I can, I'll do 3 hours, which is like 75 kilometers. And I don't listen to music because you need to be aware of your surroundings. And when I'm off road and going through woods and forests and down hills, this is where I get all my ideas and creativity from. And it was just like thinking about these things, and I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I've suddenly realized what I should have, well, not just me, what me and the Hacienda should have done many years ago.
And
I've set the wheels, and luckily Peter...
He's giving us hints now, Paul. He's giving us hints. Can you guess what it is?
I work this out. You better watch, but you're going to slip up in a minute.
But luckily, everyone involved in Hacienda was like, oh my God, this is a great idea. So I've got the authority to go ahead and make it happen. And you'll find out soon enough.
I guess that's one of the positives from this whole situation, is it has given people time to kind of plan things out and maybe come up with different directions and things that they hadn't really thought of before and things they can now pursue.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've been getting guys like yourself on, Graeme, guys like yourself on here to chat to us. Me and John would never have thought had the time to have sat and created something like this.
No, exactly.
We're learning history every day.
No, I think it's great. I've done a few interviews online with people, and they've all been a lot younger than me as well, which is interesting. And you're right. If it wasn't for lockdown, we wouldn't be sat here chatting now. But one thing I've discovered as I've got older, and one thing that I tell my students is your biggest enemy to creativity is procrastination. Mm-hmm. So you have great ideas and you keep talking about these great ideas and telling everyone about these great ideas. But the hardest thing is to actually sit down and do them.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of a lot of that myself over the years. But on Christmas Day 2016, when the news came through that George Michael had died, that totally freaked me out, because George Michael and I were born in the same year. We're born in the same month, 1963.
Right.
He was born in the end of July. I was born at the beginning of August. I discovered that when I was 19, when I bought Wham Rap.
Yeah, that's a classic.
This is what I want to do. How come George Michael's the same age as me is doing what I want to do? Because this is when I was still playing in bands.
Yeah.
And so I've always followed his career very closely because we're the same age.
Yeah.
The highs, the lows, the great tunes, the not so great tunes. And then in 2016, when Hacienda Classical went from being a one-off show to a tour, and that led to being on the road most weekends throughout the year, I also did every Wednesday night in Ibiza from the end of May to the beginning of September.
Yep.
And with the classical show, it meant lots of after parties and it meant lots of extra gigs.
Yep.
And I was just like going crazy that whole year. Yeah. And my wife was starting to get worried because I was just like fucking drinking and everything else that goes along with it. And by December, I was completely exhausted.
Yeah.
And I had the idea, I think, maybe it's time to clean up my act. And then George Michael's death was it, the catalyst. I thought, right, he's gone. Admittedly, he probably had a lot more health issues than I had.
Yep.
And probably caned it a lot more than I ever did. And so I just stopped. Which was tough, because my first gigs, I then had 4 gigs between Christmas and New Year, but they were all less than 2 hours from home. So I just drove there and back. That's fine. You're not going to drink when you're driving.
Yeah.
But then the whole of January off. But then my next 2 gigs at the end of January 2017 were Elgin and Bathgate.
Yes, I drive. That's why you can't even drive that.
Well, it wasn't so much. Well, I got the train, just trains and planes. But the thing is, Elgin, the first weekend at the end of January in 2017, they were going bloody hell for leather. It was chaos. And I'm like, no, just get me some more Iron Brew, you know. And then the next night in Bathgate, oh my God, they were just
temptation.
And I'm like, no, I know you usually give me a bottle of vodka and a bucket of ice, but I'm going to just stick with the Iron Brew.
Yeah.
And then I thought, if I can do those 2 gigs and survive, I think I'll be all right.
Yeah.
But then I discovered alcohol-free beer. And alcohol-free beer is the greatest placebo there ever was, because you feel like you're drinking.
Yeah, getting something.
People assume you're drinking.
Yep.
And your brain, believes that you're drinking, so you kind of get this little buzz. Yeah. The difference is, at the end of the night, you go back to your hotel and go to sleep, or you get in your car and drive home, which is always funny, because people think you get in the car pissed, but you're not, you know.
I just thinking of beer, but not actually drunk. No, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Graeme. I'm sure we could sit and chit chat about the history of the British scene that all night. I could, but I think.
Well, no, listen, thanks for asking me. Of course, if you go to my website, thisisgraemepark.com, you can keep up to date with everything I'm up to, and I also sometimes talk about the things that I have been up to in the past. But it's been a pleasure talking to you. Good questions.
Just before we let you go, Graeme, can I just ask you just another wee thing or two? See, with obviously being involved with the Hacienda, absolutely legendary club. What was it like actually DJing there and being involved in that scene at the time? You know, it must have been incredible.
It was incredible. to start with, I had to still pinch myself most Fridays to think, I can't believe I am doing this. It's not just the fact that I'm now part of the Hacienda Factory Records family. It's not the fact that I'm friends with New Order. It's not that the fact that I was be chatting to Tony Wilson in the DJ booth. Yeah. That was hard to take in to start with. But then looking at the 2,000 people in front of you, completely going crazy for whatever you did.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I think it took about 6 to 8 months. And then it was like, no, this is what I do. And I'm part of a bigger picture. Yeah. And to me, it's always been about the music. And so when that in the early to mid 90s, when that so-called superstar DJ thing came along, I was never comfortable with that. To me, it's always been about the music, which is why I do appreciate the support I get and the attention I get. But sometimes I wish when you're doing a gig and everyone's just like facing you and like that, I just think, turn around, face each other, and enjoy the music, because that's what it used to be like when I started out,
Yep. Okay. Definitely. No, I really appreciate that you take the time out, Graeme. We've set up these kind of chats to not only learn more about the history for ourselves, but for the newer viewers, and because with the new social media driven world, everything's international at the click of a button. So you get all these people interested in learning. So we always try and support the new up and coming DJs and talent, and also we're learning every time we talk to somebody, aren't we, John? So much more to learn.
It's been
an absolute pleasure, Graeme. Thanks for taking time out chatting to us.
No, thank you very much. And I even managed to mention Aberdeen and Pittodrie. That's really good. So there you go.
You sleep well tonight.
Yeah. Listen, thanks a lot, guys.
Take care, Graeme. Speak to you again.
All right, cheers.